am our nominee, and I will be our nominee, thanks to what you have done here in this great state. When I am our nominee, we are going to unify this party, and we are going to unify the conservative movement. When I am our nominee, we will unite our party, we will grow our party, and we will defeat Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders or whoever they nominate.
That was Republican presidential candidate Marco Rubio last night after surging in the Iowa caucuses. He tied Donald Trump when it comes to number of delegates. Ted Cruz will get 8. Trump and Rubio will both get 7. And he scored 23% of the vote, well above what the polling had projected. But it isn't just Iowans that Senator Rubio has won over. Conservative radio host Rush Limbaugh was today praising the senator's conservative credentials. Listen.
Speaking for myself, I don't like this idea that Marco Rubio is all of a sudden being labeled as an establishment candidate. I know that Rubio's got the baggage of that Gang of 8 bill. And I know that in many people's minds, he's got the baggage of wanting to grant the current number of illegal citizenship. I understand that. But I'm here to... Marco Rubio is no moderate Republican centrist. I don't see Marco Rubio as anything other than a legitimate, full-throated conservative. Nobody's pure, and nobody is ever free of making mistakes.
Joining me now, Republican presidential candidate and U.S. Senator from Florida, Marco Rubio. Senator Rubio, great to see you. Congratulations on your performance last night.
Well, thank you. We felt great about it, and it's great to be here in New Hampshire. We're excited about New Hampshire as well.
Let's start with Rush Limbaugh's comment. Do you agree that you are no moderate centrist?
I have as a conservative a record as anyone that's running for president. The difference is I have a conservative record, but I can also grow the conservative movement. In essence, we can't just win with the people we have now. We have to unify the people we have now. But we have to go out and convince more people that conservatism is the right approach for America. I've done that and will do that. We're going to go to that are struggling under student loans, the single mothers struggling paycheck to paycheck, the hardworking families across this country who are living the way that I grew up, and we are going to convince them that conservatism is the right way forward for them and for our country.
Now, as you know, one of your competitors took a shot at you today, Governor Chris Christie, who is really hoping to perform better in New Hampshire than he did in Iowa. Here's what he had to say about you coming to New Hampshire and your performance. Listen.
I'm not the boy in the bubble, okay? We know who the boy in the bubble is up here, who never answers your questions, who's constantly scripted and controlled because he can't answer your questions. So when Senator Rubio gets here, when the boy in the bubble gets here, I hope you guys ask him some questions because it's time for him to start answering questions. He wants to say this race is over, and it's all him. It seems to me that he should have to sit across from you and answer your questions the way I did.
Do you take offense to that, sir, him calling you a boy in a bubble?
Look, I think Chris didn't perform very well last night in Iowa, and sometimes when people get disappointed, they react poorly. As far as answering questions, Megyn, I've been with you at least once a week. We did a debate. You've asked me tough questions.
Lots of them.
Others have asked me tough questions. I answer tough questions all the time, but
he says you're
here's
too
the bottom
scripted.
line. I'm not in this.
You are very smooth. Your acceptance, not acceptance, but your remarks last night were amazing. You were so articulate. There was no teleprompter. To those who say, oh, he's scripted, is that scripted or is that just how you talk?
Well, that's what I believe. And obviously, when you're running a campaign, you're driving a message. But why would I tell people anything other than what I believe passionately? Look, I believe this is the greatest country in the history of the world, but that's not automatic. Every generation is going to have to do its part. And if we have another 4 years like the last 7, we are not going to remain a great country. And that's why this is a time for urgency. I feel a sense of urgency about getting this right, and I try to communicate that. I'm about to do it here in New Hampshire, and every chance I have to go on your show, I'm trying to do it as well.
Well, I will vouch for you that you have come on the Kelly File regularly, and you always sit for the questions, and I'll note for the record you never complain, never once, even if we ask really tough questions, which I appreciate. Okay, but I want to ask you this. So now that you're, we got the Marco momentum, as they call it, you know who's going to come after you both guns blazing. His name starts with D, and his last name starts with T, and you're going to be right in the middle of the crosshairs for him now that you're giving him a run for his money. How are you going to handle Donald Trump's attacks on you?
Well, again, we've dealt with that early in the summer, and we'll deal with it. If someone says something that's not true or I think is below the dignity of the presidency, we'll address it. But I'm not going to get off the topic of why I'm running to begin with. Again, I didn't get into this race to fight with other Republicans. I'm more than happy to talk about policy differences. We do have policy differences, and we'll discuss those. But I really want this campaign to be about ultimately nominating the right person, a real conservative that will unify the party, grow the conservative movement, and then win this election. Hillary Clinton cannot be the president of the United States, and that's what I'm going to focus on. And if someone said something that's not true, we'll address it, but we're going to keep our focus on what matters here.
There are still so very many Republicans running for president, and I know New Hampshire has a way of being a clearinghouse for that, but let me get specific with you. Do you think it's time for Jeb Bush to drop out?
No, I don't think it's time for anybody to let up. I mean, they've been working so hard. Look, I respect these people that are running. This is hard. They're working just as hard as I am. They have a right to see it through. I do think it's time for the Republican Party to begin to coalesce. And, of course, that's what this process is about. Coalesce around someone that can win. We have to beat Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders. And I can tell you who they're the most afraid of. It's me. Hillary Clinton attacks me 5 times for every 1 time that someone else is attacked. And there's a reason for that, Megyn. They know that if I'm our nominee, we're going to win. And so I think it's time for voters to start coalescing. The candidates, they've worked hard. They deserve to see this through, at least through New Hampshire. You'll never hear me either calling for someone to drop out, and you'll never hear about me rumors that someone is dropping out in order to try to get votes.
What is winning for you in New Hampshire? No Republican in modern history has ever gone on to win the nomination without winning either Iowa or New Hampshire. But right now, you are not poised to win New Hampshire, according to the latest polls anyway. So what's winning for you there?
Well, I think the first lesson about last night is polls are a snapshot in time. The voters are making up their minds very late in these races. We did very well with the voters that made up their minds at the end. And the other thing that I would tell you about is a very unusual political year. I mean, you have 9 or 10 legitimate candidates running full-scale campaigns on the ground here in New Hampshire. So I think some of the rules that have applied in the past are not operative this time. But let me just say this, and I know this sounds perhaps a little bit simplistic, but my goal is to get as many people as possible to vote for me in New Hampshire. And I think if that's our plan everywhere we go, when this process is finished at the end of it, we're going to have more than half the delegates, and we're going to be the nominee. How we get there, I don't know if anyone can predict that in a year like this. There's been a lot of twists and turns in this campaign. I think you would agree with that.
There certainly have. Great to see you, Senator. All the best.
Thank you, Megyn. Thanks for having me back on.